flies up into the air, and then I joystick forward, and it starts picking up speed and levels out, and then I'm in cruise mode. Boom. So
What's your flight radius? And also, you can't just land at Walmart because I assume the wind from the fans would tear up all the other cars with debris and stuff.
well, there's a couple issues. One is noise abatement, one is airspace restrictions, one is do you have permission to land? My biggest barrier right now with going to Walmart is that I need Walmart to give me permission to land in their parking lot, right? And then the parking lot needs to be clear. There can't be children running into the airspace when I'm landing this 8 propeller vehicle down, into the Walmart parking lot. Um, so it's very much a factor of real estate more than anything that I need safe haven to put this thing down. It only requires maybe, I'll call it 50 feet of safe landing area around me, um, but I need permission from the landowner to land there.
Well,
So
speaking of real estate, it seems to me that from what I understood, even when you were in rural North Carolina and everything like that, is that even some of these like efforts to show people what's going on with the flying car, you're actually in wide open space, because that's one of the things I know about Northampton is that it's very
yeah,
much a country town and everything like that. So it's not like you're going to do these demonstrations for the most part. I'm thinking in say, and if I'm here in North Carolina, or Charlotte or Greensboro, it's probably going to be a more rural kind of town and everything like that. Or are you doing them in big
yeah,
cities?
I need 50 feet to land, maybe 100 if I want to. If there's people around, I want to push the people back at least 100 feet to stay back. So I need that amount of space. That's not much, honestly. I don't need a mile of wide open field. We had that in North Carolina. It was wonderful. It's absolutely, we were landed on a racetrack and we had tons of space and tons of separation, 200 feet of separation between us and the people. And, that's a real joy to be able to land in something like that. But the plausibility of making this real and going across the nation, going from place to place, parking lot to parking lot, we actually send a scout car out in advance to scout the territory, make sure we have permission to land, and make sure we have space and safe haven to land. So,
I guess the reason I was thinking it needed to be in a wider space and everything was because I know people that have trained in parachute drops and skydiving. I,
yeah,
for one, have said that I've even had an ex-girlfriend that was trying to get me to skydive, and I was like, I'm perfectly fine with flying in a plane to go from point A to point B. I'm not trying to fall out of a plane. That's just me. Other people like
yeah.
me.
Well,
Is
we don't want trees. We don't want trees around and wires. Trees and wires are nemesis, right? Because you can
It,
easily fly into them. So,
is our hospitals eventually every hospital is going to have one of these so people don't die in traffic in an emergency? Like, I mean, getting
absolutely.
sick. It seems. Also, you've got 8 fans. How many can you lose and stay in the air?
Well, the first question, hospitals, absolutely. Hospitals already have helipads, and we can
right.
land on helipads. One of the biggest use cases of this is for EMS, and there's a lot of effort to push this into EMS because it's such a easy vehicle to go into remote places. So now, how many motors I can lose? I have 8 motors. I only need 6 to fly. I have 3 computers, 3 computer brains inside. I only need 1 to fly, so I can lose 2. I have 2 joysticks. I only need 1 to fly, so I pick my joystick. So that's how safety is accomplished with the flying car. It's safety through redundancy.
So it
So
seems like Cessnas always drop out of the sky. They have engine failure, and then they have to land on a golf course. This seems like when it's developed technology, it'll be more reliable.
well, this vehicle is actually somewhere between a safety threshold of motorcycle and car. So it's somewhere in the middle. Planes don't generally drop out of the sky when they lose a motor or they lose an engine. They have something called glide path where they can glide
Right.
down and safely land as long as there's a cornfield or a patch of grass they can land. But I have a ballistic parachute in my flying car. So if I get nervous and I feel like, ooh, I got to land quickly, I can pull the parachute as long as I'm over about 150 to 200 feet. I can pull that parachute and I'll just float down like a Christmas present.
Because
Now,
how much does it
hold on a
weigh?
second, Rick, because I mentioned earlier about your having those twins and everything like that, adult twins and everything like that. But we have a regular panelist. He's not here today, but he's very much into the video game world and everything like that. So how much is that kind of training good for people that are thinking about getting into this flying car business and everything like that? Because I know Jacoby, when he's here, he's very much an advocate for the video game world and everything like that. So I don't know if you and your kids were into video games when they were younger. I understand that they're adults now, but
yeah, absolutely. The video game training is a fantastic training for this, because when I'm using my joystick, I'm just telling it where to go. It's like driving your character on a video game, forwards, backwards, up, down, left, right. Very simple flight controls, and very similar to a helicopter. So if you're doing a helicopter simulation or a stick and rudder, old school, antique plane with a stick and rudder, that sort of motion is how I fly my flying car in this particular model. So yeah, bring it on. Video games are a good trainer for the future.
Well, speaking of good training for the future, I know that in the wars that have been going on, whether that's in Israel or in Ukraine, a lot of people have been talking about the efficiency of drones in their attack and everything like that. So what's the difference between a flying car and a drone, or are they in the same family and everything?
Well, that's a great question. As soon as you put a human in a drone, it is no longer a drone. So that's the first difference, is that we're talking about humans and manned flight. Human manned flight takes lots of years of testing and safety protocols and all kinds of things. With a drone, you can fly it and crash it and build another drone and fly that one and crash it too. And that's perfectly okay. It's unmanned. So that's the primary difference between a flying car and a drone. It's a completely different mental space. So if I'm going to get into an aircraft, I think about my personal safety. I think about, how do I get home if I land somewhere unexpectedly? I think of, I have all these considerations to take into play. When I fly a drone, I just think, is my battery power full? That's, up and down. As long as I have enough battery, I can go flying my drone, and that's okay. So there's many more considerations that you need to be situationally aware of. So.
Any idea what the price point might be when these become commercially available?
Sure. They are commercially available. It's this particular flying car, the Pivotal Blackfly, is $190,000. It has a 25-mile range. So I can go 25 miles, 25 minutes. Goes about 60 miles an hour, a little bit more, but that is controlled by a governor. In other words, there's a thing in the computer that makes it go less fast. This vehicle actually probably sit really nicely around 90 or 100 miles an hour, but because there's a government regulation, we pull back the power in order to fly slower. So.
Well, coming back to the price point, do you think that it will drop? Because I do know that there was a time that a lot of vehicles were more expensive than they are now. Shucks, planes used to be more expensive than they are now and everything. So at what point do you think that we will see the price become more affordable, say, for somebody that's in the middle class? Maybe not somebody that's in the poverty class, but definitely somebody that's in the middle class.
It has to get more wide scale. Okay, so there are 5 flying cars delivered by Pivotal. There are now 2 flying cars that were delivered by another company called Jetsons. So there's 7 in America right now. There's a few more that were delivered to the military, right? The price point of technology, as it becomes more commonplace and as those numbers grow, 2026 will be a new manufacturing run, new deliveries, all of that. We'll see more and more flying cars take to the airwaves. You'll have things like insurance. So right now it's virtually impossible to get aircraft insurance on a flying car because there's only 7 in America and there's no actuarial tables to assess the risk. So So no one will insure us except for these exceptional insurance companies, which do unusual use cases. So that's the only way to get insurance right now. But as soon as there's 1,000 flying cars or 2,000 flying cars, the insurance infrastructure will mature. The regulations will mature. The price point of technology will come down. I think about my first laptop. My first laptop was $3,500 and it weighed about 10 pounds. It was a bit like a brick, right? And then 12 months later, I could get the same thing for $2,000 and it weighed half as much. And now I can get the same thing for, a few hundred on refurbished and it weighs almost nothing. So,
Yeah, but really quickly, I did mention Jatovia, I asked her about the training and video games, how that can help with the flying car. And she did say that has helped her in the past and everything like that. So she was saying that even helped her in her getting this whole flying car and everything like that. And we've also got Dr. Tasha from Canada and Dr. Sharif, who's in Bangladesh. So you mentioned that there are 7 in the U.S. How many of these are in the world and everything? Or is it more prominent in other parts of the world? I guess is what I'm really asking.
Oh, that's a great question. It's interesting. The flying cars cannot be adopted in certain markets because of what we call FAA regulations. So in America, FAA regulations are such that a flying car must require no pilot's license, single seater, 62 miles an hour, right? These are the regulations that have to be met in order for every man to be able to apply to become a flying car pilot. Well, if you go to China, those regulations are much looser. So you go to China and you'll see there's a company called XPeng that has their own version of the flying car. And they have a much higher penetration in the hundreds, maybe even more by now, because their regulations allow for 2-seaters for the same thing. And so just that simple notion, the ability to fly has allowed them, the looser regulations has allowed their market and their technology to mature into the market much more rapidly than we have. What's going to happen is backwards. That's going to put pressure on the US to change the regulations or to loosen the regulations to make this happen. So things like autopilot, when that becomes possible in the air, then you'll see the regulations loosening up. So in Italy, to fly the Jetson 1, the Jetson 1 is another flying car that's delivered the 2 units to the US right now. Well, they have to have a helicopter license in Italy in order to fly their flying car in Italy. So they have tighter regulations, but they come to America and now they can sell to the common man. And so it just depends on what country you're sitting in and where their regulations are, how quickly or how rapidly the adoption can take place.
Now, I've got an abstract question. I did see your hand, Rick, and everything, but I do have an abstract question. I was reading earlier today, and fortunately, pilot is not on this list, but the Department of Education is naming certain jobs that they're considering to be professional and everything like that. And ironically, nurses were not one of them, architects were not one of them, physical therapists were not one of them. I do think pilots were still listed as professional and everything like that. So I just wanted your take on that, because I did see that list and everything, and I was just curious as to whether this is considered a professional field, because I know even sometimes Nick has teased, because he's very much in the joint indicated conversation about education and how certain jobs aren't as practical as others. Like, I don't know that he feels that archaeology is all that practical, but I'm thinking, what is your thoughts about the practicality of being a pilot and everything like that?
Being a pilot will always be a professional thing, because a commercial pilot flies people around. You need a license to do that. My vehicle, my flying car, is a single seater. So I'm only flying myself around. I'm only flying in uncontrolled airspace, which is 95% of America, but it's remote airspace. I'm not flying downtown Dallas, right? I'm not flying downtown New York City, because that airspace is restricted. And so, if I, as a flying car pilot, if I didn't have a pilot's license, I don't want someone without a pilot's license flying into a place where there's heavy population, where they can put someone at risk. So we have to consider the safety factors when we consider the profession. the profession is a direct result of the safety of the industry. So if you want to fly into Dallas or you want to fly into these heavily populated areas, until that technology matures to get me there safely without touching anything, well, it needs to be the bastion of the schooled pilot. So
will the flight, when this thing becomes more widely available, will the flight computers make them kind of idiot and jerk proof? Like when you think about the price point, people who can afford 190K, some of those people are idiots. And will the computers like be able to stop them from buzzing through Dallas and then peeking into windows and doing ridiculous stuff?
Well, sure, but think about when you get behind the wheel of your car, you can drive it into a tree if you want to. Yeah. You can drive it off the road. You can create a risk for other people if you need to. There's the same level of responsibility with flight. You have to be able to have a certain level of responsibility, a certain level of respect, a certain level of safety, and you have to be aware of these things. So that's the training program that the manufacturer puts you through. And that's the protocols that you need to follow when you fly a flying car. So
I guess the point that Rick is trying to get to and everything along those lines, I'm sorry, Heather, and everything is, if you think about space travel and everything like that, there is a number of people that are well off, quite well off, that they can afford to go in those planes and everything like that. I mean, it's very easy for Elon Musk to fly his spacecraft. Now, he hasn't had that much success because quite a few of them have also blown up and everything like that. So I'm just wondering
not so
take
easy
on that, because that seems to be one of the issues that I think Rick was kind of alluded to, is that sometimes people that are quite wealthy may not always have the best common sense.
Yeah, sure. And in that case, they're going to wind up being passengers, and they aren't going to be certified by the manufacturer. I mean, if you have the manufacturers more than anyone don't want any incidents to happen by people who are not responsible or respectful for the technology. So yeah, I mean, those people do exist, and eventually there will be autopilot. But in the early days, we have a responsibility to keep the car on the road. We have a responsibility to keep the flying car out of the trees and out of the wires, and that responsibility is on the driver. And so, you know, in the early days, it is less regulation and less automation, and also more cost. And as time goes by, like all technology, that cost will fall. Those automated elements will become idiot-proof, will become easy, will become manageable for every man, and it will then expand to fit the box, right? Once every man can do it, once autopilot exists in the air, then you'll see, once those costs are down, you will see a major expansion in flying cars. Now, this is the first one. This is the very first flying car in the nation that we have our hands on. Well, there's only 5, maybe 7, right? So we're breaking the ground. It's the Wild West. We're inventing the rules as we go, you know, following the guidelines that we have. But
well, speaking of the rules as you go and everything like that, just really quickly, I'm a big fan, and some people on this network know that, of nature. I follow the Merlin app and all along those lines to see what birds are out there and everything like that. So how much are you having to pay attention to the rest of nature when you're out there flying? Because I mean, one of the other things that we've heard about in airplanes, regular airplanes, is they don't always pay attention as much as they should to the rest of the wildlife out there. And there have been incidences where birds have caused wrecks, or there have been things like that. So I just wondered, how much do you have to get trained in understanding that you're not alone in the air?
Yeah, we're not alone. There's birds, there's wires, there's all sorts of obstacles, and all of them present a problem for airplanes, for flying cars, for, you know, anything that takes to the air. We have the safety measure of the ballistic parachute. So if I was to, you know, enter a bird strike and I felt like, oh no, more than 6 motors have been demolished by the birds and I can't make it to the ground, I'll pull my parachute and float down. You know, you be aware of birds. I had an incredible experience, my very first cruise lap. So there's the flying car that I fly, the Blackfly, has 2 modes, 2 flight modes. So there's hover mode, where you're pitched backwards and you're upside down and you're just hanging out in the air and you're kind of looking around almost upside down, you know, staring straight at the sky. That's called hover mode. And then there's cruise mode, where you're where you're tooling along at a clip, 60 miles an hour. Well, the first time I went into cruise mode, there was a red-tailed hawk that parked itself right off my wing. And it was absolutely magical. I flew around the cruise lap, and this hawk flew with me all the way along and then dashed off before I hit the ground, before I came down. And I was worried at first, but the birds don't want to be hit any more than I want to hit the birds. So being that this vehicle goes so slow, and most birds can keep up and outfly it, as that bird did sitting off my wing. I
think Dr. Sharif had a question for you as well. I saw his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. This is very interesting sessions. Thank you organizing these sessions. And I just read some article about you from LinkedIn and others. This is very interesting projects you have. As I am working with some largest business incubations in South Asia, I work with Chittagong Business Incubation in South Asia. I work with IIT, some business incubations, and some largest investment corporations. So your projects, honestly speaking, is a very visionary and very, very helpful for South Asian, some cities, especially where we develop from some urban plan and all of the things. And we have highly density populated country. So I think 2 days ago, Mark Wayne asked me that, what's your thought? I said, if I find this kind of solution, definitely I'm going to invite them first in Dhaka, because we have highly density populated country. People has traffic and all of the things. You have amazing projects. So if from my World Talent Economic Forum institutions, if we want to collaborate with you for South Asian markets, for research and innovations and growing your company, do you have any plan, or is it possible practically? And what's your thoughts about this Asia Pacific market? Definitely, there are a lot of smart city project is happening. It may help to grow your company very fast.
Yeah, well, I don't work for the manufacturers, so I'm a pilot. And my group of pilots, we're all independent flyers. So I have a special ed teacher, I have a smoke jumper, I have myself, I'm a tour manager for large events. So I don't work for the manufacturer, but I work with the manufacturers. So they are the ones that would take the jump or take the leap into the various markets. There is an interesting concept in pilotage where you require a pilot's license of the air corridor. So they have one of these over Disneyland. There's like a corridor that's been carved out of the controlled airspace, which is like a freeway in the sky, where you can fly through it without the typical restrictions that you would have in what's called the Class Bravo or the restricted airspace. This concept of air corridors, I believe, is going to become a foundation of city travel eventually. We will have a network of these freeways in the sky, of these air corridors, where flying cars will go through the air corridors. We'll also have maybe LiDAR or magnetic repulsion. Imagine a magnet turned backwards and it repulses that concept or that idea, with flying cars, so that they can't get close or near to each other to travel down a corridor. So things like this technology will mature. It will happen through LiDAR. It might happen through GPS. It might happen through a bunch of different things, but those types of technologies, the air corridor, the magnetic repulsion, those types of things will.
How does the energy cost per mile compare to cars?
Oh, so low. I barely spend anything on energy. So I did a recharge of my flying car using a Ford Lightning. So a Ford Lightning has what's called a V2L jack in the back, where I could plug my flying car into. I did a landing in a field, pulled up the Ford Lightning, and I plugged in and recharged. I went from 20% to 80%. Do you know how many miles of capacity came off that Ford Lightning? Can you guess?
Nope.
7 miles. I used 7 miles of power of what would have cost the Ford Lightning to go 7 miles to recharge my flying car to be able to take the next, 10-minute flight to get back home. So
You had a question?
I've got actually two questions, but I'll start off with the first one.
Okay.
Sorry for popping in and everything. The first one is, how will 3D printing affect the whole flying car industry that you're piloting, essentially?
yeah, 3D printing. 3D printing is incredible, and there's a whole parts industry cropping up around 3D printing, but that's in the hands of the manufacturers. The manufacturer that made my flying car, it was invented by the inventor of memory foam, which is interesting. Imagine a piece of foam core with carbon fiber, and foam in the middle, some sort of carbon foam in the center of it. It's very strong, right? And then they made connectors out of that same material, which would turn sideways and would be very light. Not 3D printed, but it's a function of my technology is foam. So that's what I'm using to create these connectors. Now, as time goes by, all of that changes. It just depends on where the manufacturer is and capacities as well. When you look at a manufacturing run, to do something on a 3D printer is a time-consuming event. And so if you're doing a high-scale manufacturing run, maybe that's not the best choice. But certainly at this stage where we have prototypes, where we have pre-production vehicles, those types of things, 3D printing can come into play. So
So then my follow-up question, which is kind of like what Dr. Sharif did when he was talking about the World Economic Forum. So I actually have an expo that I'm putting together for next year in Durham, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. How would one reach out to yourself to be a featured presenter and so on and so forth? Because the expo that I'm putting together is called Future Fest Connect. Yeah. And what we're doing is looking at all the future technologies and a way to, not only in the game development side, because since you had mentioned that games were not essential, but played a role in terms of learning flying cars, but it's just talking about how to navigate a world and utilizing human technology rather than focusing so heavily on AI technology. So how would one go about having you, the whole group, or your whole group, including the flying car, as a display at the event? How would one get in contact with you to do that?
Yeah, just reach out. thesoartour.com, thesoartour@gmail.com is my email address. So the SOARTOUR. So our group of pilots, we have technicians, we have pilots, we have special ed teacher, we have all sorts of people with all sorts of crazy different backgrounds who make up the pilot team. So I've got a team of 8 different pilots who come together. 3 of us will come for this expo, 5 of us will come for that expo. We bring the flying cars in, we can do flying car demos. We need to have landowner permission. So that's your first battle, is to get us permission to fly and get us a place where they say, sure, you can fly. Okay, safety. And then we bring in the flying cars and we bring in the people, and we can run seminars, we can run keynotes, we can run, breakouts, whatever you need.
Sounds good and everything like that. So I appreciate that. I was going to actually ask something.
That'd be perfect. Because this is going to be huge for Durham, North Carolina. Because that's the goal, is to display and have showcase what we can, especially on the flying cars. Because I think everybody would be just astounded at the technology around it. And honestly, your descriptions and talk today, it'd be perfect. It's a perfect fit.
I'll tell you what, everyone who comes and sits in that cockpit has an epiphany moment, and it is fantastic to watch. We just did the Electrify Expo in Dallas, and we probably had 1,000 people sit in that seat. I don't know how many people over the course of the days of the expo. It was nonstop, morning to night, people sitting in that seat. And every person who sat in that seat had this, oh my gosh, this is now. This is real. They walk up and they say, is this the future? And I say, yeah, but it's also the now. It's here. It's now. It's happening. We're flying. There are 1,000 flights on this vehicle alone that's sitting right here. So there is this incredible epiphany that happens when people sit in the cockpit, grab that joystick, and realize they can go forwards, backwards, up, down, left, right. It's not rocket science, right? This is a little bit more in the video game realm. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. And
Oh, that's perfect.
now we got to get ready to go to our Ukraine-Russia show that Sasha does and everything like that. And I think he's waiting for some of his guests to join. But if they don't join, we might have to do like we did last time, and Ricky might have to join him as well as Nick, and hopefully Nick can put
Send a
the
link. Send us a link.
in there and can put the whole way that he can be found and everything like that. Or Sasha can do it, because I think I still got Sasha in the room and everything like that. But yeah, if you can definitely join him, I'm sure he would appreciate it. But just really quickly, Heather, I know we're going to have more of this conversation on the online dinner party and everything like that tomorrow and everything like that. But if you can share with folks how you can be reached and everything like that. But I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And I know that in addition to working at Pod TV, and I'm an event planner, so I'm already thinking of tons of events like Jatobi that we might want to get you at and everything like that.
Yeah, we're doing a tour across country. These pilots are the first people to have a flying car in the nation, and they're all under the SOAR Tour. So if you want the SOAR Tour to come to your event, go to thesoartour.com and contact me, thesoartour@gmail.com, and I will see about making that happen. So yeah, we're looking for events to go to. We're looking for sponsors. We're looking for anything we can find to make this possible, to arrive in another city and make people realize that this is the now. Every city we go to, we're on the news everywhere. So it's the Jetsons. We're here. It's happening. So
Fascinating, I would say.
yeah.
Fascinating.
Thank
Okay. SoarTour.com. All right. Well, hopefully we'll have you back on some of these programs, either in Asia or where I'm at in Spain or somewhere else around the world. And with that, we'd like to thank you for coming to World Edition. I guess we'll see everybody tomorrow. Hopefully we'll see you around. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.